Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Trialogues. I am joined by Ricardo Calvario and Ethan Indigo. Tell them where they can find you guys.
So my name is Ricardo Calvario, and you can find me at the link that you see in the screen at an X at Ricardo Calvario1. And you also can find me in my Institute for Natural Philosophy podcast called The Shaman and the Philosopher under that name on YouTube. And I also recommend our sister podcast, that is Universe Unveiled, also on the Institute for Natural Philosophy YouTube channel, also on X. And that's all. Ethan?
Honored to be here with you guys as always. Appreciate communicating with you guys and hearing your ideas. Ethan Indigo Smith, easy to find on all the social media, writer, author, observer of our times and follies. And yeah, again, appreciate you guys.
Thank you. So, what do we have on deck this week? Well, Ricardo wanted to play this short video about how computers do math. So, we'll start out with that.
The mathematics used in modern computers is identical with the mathematics that was used in ancient Egypt. And I'll show you how that works. Today, when we write a number, we work in powers of 10 and place value. We have the ones, the tens, the hundreds columns. So if you wanted to say 472, we're really saying 4 100s, 7 tens plus 2 ones. But the way that this occurs in modern computers is not place 10 value, but place 2 value. So their powers are 1s, 2s, 4s, 8s, 16s, and so forth. So if a computer wants to think of the number 16, let's say, well, if the computer wants to look at the number, let's say 14, it's 1 8, 1 4, it's 12, 1 2, and no ones. This kind of arithmetic is appropriate for computers because they deal with electricity, which can either be on, represented by 1, or off, represented by 0. The flow of electricity or no flow of electricity, these powers of 2. Now, the way the ancient Egyptians developed this can be seen in the way that they would multiply. Now, neither the ancient Egyptians nor the modern computers use a times table. Times table is something we teach children in school, and it has to be memorized. But it's really inappropriate for a computer. And I'll show you how, for example, that works. The modern computer designers, as well as the ancient Egyptians, were aware of a mathematical fact that any number can be shown to consist of the sum of powers of 2. What I mean by that is if we write the powers of 2, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and so forth, you notice there's a doubling going on. And any number can be represented by the sum of these. For example, if we wanted to choose the number 17, it's 16 plus 1. So I can count 1, 2, 1 plus 2 make 3, 4, 1 plus 4 make 5, 2 plus 4 make 6, 1 plus 2 plus 4 make 7, 8, and so forth. And so any number can be represented by this, the sum of elements of this sequence. So if I wanted to multiply two numbers, let's say we wanted to multiply 17 by 25. In order to multiply the way the Egyptians did and the way that computers do, all you have to know is how to double numbers like this and how to add two numbers together. No multiplication table needs to be memorized. So 17 times 25, I've identified the elements of 17 as 1 plus 16. And in this column, I write the number 25, and I just keep doubling it. Twice 25 is 50, twice that, 100, twice that, 200, twice that, 400. So in order to know the product of 17 times 25, we just have to look at which numbers are circled over here and circle the corresponding ones over here and add them together. So 17 times 25 is 400 plus 25, or 425. It's that simple. No memorization, no times table, no tears in the third grade about this. And this is how computers do it as well, except instead of circling or not circling a number, they would have a 1 or a 0. So in other words, the number 17 in binary arithmetic by computers is 10001, or electricity, no, 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 and electricity. And that will give us the sum. And that's how this works. Now, division in computers or in ancient Egypt is just the opposite of multiplication. It's the inversion. So let's say we wanted to divide 1075 by 25. And we don't want to use the multiplication table, nor do we want to use any kind of long division. And the way to do it is like this. Simply write out the powers of 2, 1, 4, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and so forth. Here again, just the powers, the doubling of 25, 50, double that, 100, 200, 400, 800. I stopped there because if I went further, it's 1600, which is larger than 1075. And if I know that 1075 is 800 plus 200 make 1000, and 50 and 25, I just have to look across at the numbers that correspond there, or in a computer, the electrical circuit. And if I know that 32 plus 8 is 40, 42, 43. So 1075 divided by 25 is 32 plus 8 plus 2 plus 1, 43. No multiplication table, no long division, no carrying, no borrowing. It's just very straightforward. Now, how did the ancient Egyptians know this? Well, I might add that also the ancient Chinese knew this. The binary system of powers of 2 is also the basis of the trigrams and hexagrams of the I Ching. The flowing nature of the universe, how things turn into one another in a flowing process in a binary kind of a pulsation. So this kind of arithmetic was also known to the Chinese as well. Now, did the modern computer people look to the ancient Egyptians or the Chinese? No. In fact, they didn't look to each other, but they all looked to the same place, and that is to the eternal principles of mathematics. And the Egyptians were quite adept at looking at eternal principles.
That's awesome.
No, I think it can't get simpler than that and more obvious. So I posted this a few times, and I find it very curious that now that we are aware, and we are aware from long, because this is from Magic Egypt from John Anthony West. It's a clip that I extracted from his documentary series. So this is known for at least 25 years, but we still give timetables to the children at school, right? For what reason? If this is much simpler for them to understand how numbers play together and how they can be used to obtain results. So
the proper way to do it is to achieve maximum frustration and minimal output by the children in the classroom. I don't know why I have to keep explaining this to you, Ricardo, that it's working how it's supposed to work.
Yes. Well, I was discussing this with a friend not so long. And I also discussed this with my partner. That is, to get a degree in this day and age it doesn't make anyone intelligent. The fact that someone has a diploma, it's not like he has a diploma, so he must be a bright, intelligent person. Wrong. It just means that you might be intelligent, but you did your degree because you are good at memorizing and then regurgitating things. That's the only requisite that it's necessary to achieve a degree, is being able to memorize and then put those memories into action when you are questioned about something. It doesn't require you to question the things you memorize. It doesn't require you to how should I say it? To have any personal interest or passion by what you are learning. The only thing you have to do is to memorize what you're being said. In fact, if you try to question and deep digger, the professor will tell you you don't need that for this class. You just need to understand what I told you, be able to reproduce it, right? And in here, I'm going to correct myself, because it doesn't necessarily, that's what I wanted to say. It doesn't necessarily need that you have to understand it, as long as you can memorize it and know where it's put when you're questioned, or when you have a test, or when you putting that into action. You just have to know where to apply what you memorized. I'm not trying to denigrate anyone that has a degree. I'm just saying that. I'm just saying. I'm just saying that most people think of those that have a degree, being them archaeologists or being them whatever you want to say, engineers. All it's needed. I know a few engineers, and some of them are the dumbest people I ever know. They are complete morons. Okay, and still they have a degree in very complicated stuff, right? So something doesn't add up. So it's as you said, Headless. It's a matter of just memorization and being able to say it what you memorized. That's all.
Well, this brings up an interesting topic of heuristics, like the shortcut methods we use as tools to get from point A to point B. And how cultural are those heuristics? Are those being lost with every generation that we lose, one or two bits of vocabulary? We don't use the same terms, or are we losing the heuristics? Where there are ways of doing things, shortcuts, that now we've completely lost because we've been given a different way of doing things. That doesn't necessarily make them better or easier.
Sure. Look, Portugal suffered, went through, I'm not going to say suffered, went through a process that is called the Orthographic Agreement. So as you know, Portugal had several colonies, amongst them Brazil. Well, to the disappointment of most of my country fellows, I say that Brazilian isn't Portuguese, is Brazilian, because there is so many difference. In fact, if they start use colloquialisms, we don't understand a word of what they're saying unless you see a lot of telenovelas, and then you start getting a grasp on it. So here's the absurd. Some 15 years ago, there was this orthographic agreement. And instead of correcting the wrongs because this is between Portugal and Brazil, instead of correcting the wrongs of the Brazilian version of Portuguese, what it was done is to include all the things that damage and hurt the mother language brought into the language. So for instance, we don't have the C with a I don't know how you call it, with a comma beneath it. It took most of the different types of punctuation that allows you to difference a word and its context. So now they don't accept, if you write a paper that is for the government or for school and you don't apply the orthographic agreement, which most of the writers from Portugal opposed vehemently, even going to the parliament saying it's absurd, you don't have the context of what you're reading. You have to guess what that word means, because it doesn't longer is written as it used to be, like catu, or cat, what do you call a cactus, that's in English, right? For us, it would have a C before the T. The C is gone. So that word now has 3 or 4 different meanings that you have to, while you're reading the text, you have to understand what that word means, right? So
you got decolonized.
Exactly.
Right? That's big decolonization. Turns out that's the same thing as colonization. It's just a different group of people that are doing it.
And I wonder, Headless, as you were describing the limitations of language, and as we're on the subject of mathematics and number, it makes me think about the different base systems of mathematics and how they might hold our perspective, right? We use the base 10 primarily today, but there were other cultures and times where different sets of base numerology, base number system were used, and the Mayans particularly, I believe they used a base 4 mathematics. Base 6. Okay, thank you. So, and other.
Oh, where's Ethan? Did he press the wrong button?
I don't know. Maybe he's in a time warp.
Oh, there
Of
he
course.
is again.
There you are.
But it just makes me wonder in relation to your questioning, and we've even covered this before. This question of how language holds us. I wonder how different base sets might steer us too.
It changes the focus, and you never know how that's going to play out in different areas in society. Like all of the different aspects of the culture that we interact with create like a web of meaning within our brains, like a web of associations. And you can either expand that web of associations or contract it down. But in doing so, you're changing the shape of the information pattern in your brain,
Yeah.
So having the different forms of a base numbering system could definitely change that whole perspective just from the bottom up.
Yeah, but it is, as you say, it's the dumbing down constantly. It's never to do an upgrade. It's never to get it better than it was or perfect the system. It's always, oh, let's make it easy for the people, right? Because the people are stupid. Well, the people aren't stupid. The people just follow whatever it's imposed on them. Well, I agree. Some people are stupid, but not all the people are stupid. So it's a constant. It's like the responsible for education in Portugal told me, and by verbatim, that is, our interest is not to increase the cultural level of the population, but to decrease it. Right? This was told to my face. So, what can we say?
It does appear to be part of the larger ambiance, if you will, of the restriction of creative thought and the implementation of standard organization skills. That's it. Follow the boss's instructions.
Right. Well, it sounds like this government official declared open hostility to your culture. Like, how does a government official working for the people in that area openly declare war on that culture because they don't like that it's more complex than in a different area? So it's like you're mowing the grass on towers that people have built, right?
Sure. But look, she said that to my face because I was not there with the camera or recording, or there wasn't an audience, because the same person came to the first day of school where my daughters were, right, and gave a speech on the importance of education of the young and how no effort should be spared in order to give them the better education possible, and so on and so forth. So these people are, well, to be a politician, you have to be a good actor, first of all. So, because
I had, anecdotally, I had an interesting experience growing up. I attended a school for 5 years. Yeah. And it was what was called an alternative education school. Middle school and high school were integrated. Classes were about 2 hours long, the majority of them. And it was all about inspiring us to learn on our own. I had a life experience that brought me to other standard high schools later. And I could definitely see a difference in things. The things that I didn't learn were like basic concepts and studies to them, and all coordinated towards the memorization of things. And then that's it. Whereas the more elaborate things and so forth, we had debates and discussions on. And interestingly enough, to my anecdote experience and the larger ambiance that we all are seeing, that whole format was crushed, despite all the awards and all the connections it had with Brown University. It was very distinguished schooling operation. It was very successful, but it does not continue. Probably primarily because it required more attention. The more work for the teachers.
sure. So you had an experience more or less like George Carlin, went to school where they were given some of the basics that were obligatory, but then they were completely free to pursue whatever they were interested in, and they were innocent. How should I say it? They were rewarded for their curiosity on other subjects and were given those other subjects. For instance, I remember from when I was in Catholic school, there was only 2 disciplines where we could speak our mind. Funny enough, it was moral education, that was about religion, where we could pose questions, especially because we are not given the Old Testament, so we only could post questions about the New Testament. And the Old Testament is a dangerous thing. It's a dangerous thing. But it was that and philosophy, right? So my first interesting discussions in school were about Plato's cave and determinism. So that was encouraged. But for instance, I was flunked at history, wrongly flunked at history, because even in that time, with the little amount of information that we had no internet. We just had some books and some good documentaries going on television and so on, that we have to wake very early in the weekend just to watch it. So I didn't like to wake up early to go to school, but to watch the documentaries on the weekend I did. So, and when you are in class and are receiving this information from the history teacher, right? And you say, I'm sorry, but that's not exactly what I've got from other people, because this and this and this, right? And then when it came to test, I was very obstinate and I included all the additional information and she just scratched. So I flunked at history because of that. So some places it was encouraged and in others was highly criticized. You have to follow exactly what you were told, or otherwise you get flunked. So I think you were very fortunate, Aitan, because, and I'm hoping that as the Institute for Natural Philosophy grows, one of our objectives is to have a school so that where we will recreate that within the law, but we'll give anyone that is a student there the opportunity to pursue whatever is their fancy, be it in art or be it in literature or history, whatever it is. So, and giving all the means to explore that interest.
I am really blessed to have got that immersion and that type of education. I didn't know it at the time, how valuable it was, but it was definitely a valuable way to learn how to learn rather than learn what was dictated.
What if the Catholic Church was right keeping the Old Testament away from the children?
Well, it's not this. I don't know if this answers your question, but something you made me think, Headless, in your presentation of the monotheism essentially being a psyop. It's almost like they talk about feminism being implemented in phases or expanding in phases, rather, not implemented. That's maybe the wrong word, but the first phase. Well, it could be the first phase being equitability and a lot of really reasonable issues, and now to the point where it's Headless, you might know better examples, but women being soldiers and on the police force, maybe not the best idea. Women being equal with men in ways that are physical, and it's just not true.
Well, this is different. This is subsidies, right? So we've got female business owner subsidies in the United States. So if you've got a female CEO, you get tax breaks, big tax breaks. So what they do,
I didn't know that.
Yes,
Wow.
yes, you get
all states or just a few? All states,
so
or
this
just
is a federal tax break. So we're
it's
talking
everywhere.
about federal taxes get slashed if you've got a female CEO. So what they do is they have women on the ownership document, and they don't really do much inside of the company just to get that tax break. Well, an interesting thing happens once that woman gets divorced. She owns the entire company because the guy was trying to get a tax break. So there's another big subsidy. It just hands everything over to the women in society, and they don't see the subsidies, obviously. All they know is that they're out for the resources. And so it's almost like we've handed over all of society to women and then removed any sort of responsibility whatsoever. Because, obviously the women who get on these tax documents to say that they're the owner of the company, they didn't earn the money to become the owner of the company. And very rarely do those companies survive after the divorce, right? So we've given them all of the money, but we've removed any sense of responsibility or accountability, because it was the government that was always putting their thumb on the scales the whole time. And what's interesting is first wave feminism was opposed by other women. The biggest opposition to first wave feminism were the more traditional women who said, we actually have a better position in society without the right to vote, because once you have the right to vote, then you can start to blame women for some of the horrible things that the government does. And let's look at the repeal the 19th Amendment so far, right? I mean, they're actively trying to lobby out there to remove women's suffrage because they're blaming them for the votes that.
Are you for real?
Yes.
Is the world got that dumb?
Well, again, it's like, how do you know what's happening with the vote? Right? It's real easy to say that all the women are voting a certain way, but those are just the statistics we're getting back from the government. It was the government that bypassed all of the women who said, we don't want this, and gave it to them anyway, right? So what we think of as sort of ability might be another way of laundering the centralization of power and authority by the government. And we don't really see the difference because it's generations outside of our control.
Sure, but
because you have to go back to the founding documents and all the rest of it.
Because sexism apart, because I, as a father, took care of my twins for, not that my partner at the time didn't do it, but she did, but she worked and I worked nights, so I kept the kids during the day. But my point is this: they had to find a way to take children from the family. And the way to take children from the family, because the culture at that time dictated that women were the caretakers of the children, they have to emancipate. They had to emancipate women, right? So let's create a social construct where women are as entrepreneurs as male, and they should be on the front of work and should be on the army and should be on the government and should be on every company everywhere, should be working 9 to 5 exactly as the man does. That way, right, if you think correctly, in a family today, you put your kid into kindergarten at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m., right? You pick him up after work, you give him dinner and put him to bed. Right? So what is that children gaining from their parents? What is the identity that the mother and the father are being able to give to their children, apart when it's a weekend or holidays? There is no contact. No one knows one another. In fact, even the couples don't know one another because they don't spend any time together. That's why when COVID happened in Europe, there was 80% of divorce or something like that increase. Enormous, because they were faced with one another inside the same house and they realized, I don't like you very much. I like you and I only see you 2 hours a day and go to bed and sleep, right? When they were faced to live together, it didn't work very well because people realized that they weren't very much to the liking of one another. So if you put your children into the system, and the system is the one to educate with all the pressures, with all the identification of groups and segregation of niches of cultural, be it hip hop or whatever you want to call it, right? Or gangs or being the bad boy or whatever. It isn't the parents that are in control of the children anymore. And that was done by the emancipation of women, right?
I got an even worse one for you. So they've actually done studies where they're trying to simulate more of a traditional human society where the man and the woman both go out and do the things while the elder parents actually raise the children, right? And what they found is that the children and the grandparents both hate the experience, right? The grandparents don't like raising their children's children, and the grandkids don't like being around the grandparents. But over a longitudinal study, they found that both the children and the grandparents have better health outcomes over the length of their lifetime by having the relationship with an elder generation. So it's almost like there are certain instances where it's like, yes, actually having them encounter these, elder generations is beneficial to the baseline health for the rest of their lives, because they sort of have a conception about what growing old and dignity looks like. And they have a vision of that for themselves and for their future. And they're looking for, making more concrete, solid plans with their lives and all of these other positive steps that they might not necessarily have from their immediate parents. And since we've split up not just the family unit, but also the extended family unit, we're on like 3 layers of inflation here, people. Family inflation, where we're paying for everybody else, paying for the government, paying for government extravagances, and we get nothing back for it. So we don't even see that other generation of how people lived in the same perspective that maybe our ancestors did. So we've split up the family into smaller and smaller units, and it's gotten us nothing, but it's gotten the government a lot richer.
Sure, and isn't the studies reveal that children absorb like sponges everything until 5 or 6 years old, right? And that's exactly the age that they used to be at home with the family, and now are placed in kindergarten since a few months old. So all that they absorb is what is given them in those institutional places. There are some better than others, of course, but it's not their family. It's not the father or the mother or the grandparents, right? It's strangers. Our kids are being raised by strangers that we know nothing about. They were just put into that position. We have to accept that they are good people to be in that position, which is, I hope it's more often than not corresponding to their actual abilities to raise children. But it's not the family anymore. So that identification, that cultural values that was passing on from father to son doesn't happen anymore, right? So what educates children today is YouTube. I hope they see videos like this one so they learn something, and or at least learn to question everything. That's the best one. It's TikTok. It's movies, clips. Not the family.
6, 7.
Yeah.
I wanted to recommend a book, Harrison Bergeron by Vonnegut. Have you guys heard of this?
No,
I'm not.
It involves a future world where they enforce equality rather than equitable or equal rights, and they do so in a manner that's so outlandish in that they hinder or hamper the people that have more capability, right? So their whole version and understanding of equality is not equal rights, it's equal capability. So the journalist and the speaker will be hampered by a metal cage. The strong man will be weighed down by bags of birdshot, and so on and so on and so on. And so I think this allegory, this great story, it really presents this confusion of the pursuit of equality and the enforcement of capability, right? It's confused and twisted. That's not what we're trying for at the essence of the spirit of the pursuit of equality. It's to have equal rights, not have someone hampered because they're better at something, right? Great story.
Isn't that happening already?
That's what I'm saying.
Because if what I see is the method that is being used to teach is pointed at the children with less abilities, not to enhance the extreme abilities of those that are. Because my point in here is this: their method is all the children are equals. Everybody is an equal. Well, we aren't. We are all completely different, right?
Yep.
And that's what in kindergarten you are allowed to express yourself, paint whatever you want, spread paint into there, create whatever drawings you want to do. But as soon as you start on the first grade, all of that is eliminated. You enter into a process where you have to follow what the system is wanting you to perform and to be able to respond to, right? So everybody all of a sudden is turned equal. So I have made this question many times. How many Da Vinci's, Newton's, Bach, Beethoven's, Monet's, how many of these artists have we lost through this grind need that is the school system? Because every single children that has these aspirations or have these capabilities and abilities and talents within them are just eliminated by the system. They're just trashed down because it doesn't matter to the overall success on your school or curriculum. All that matters is that you follow the system. Everybody is making equal, right? I had in my class one or two guys that were clearly a high brain capacity that were always ahead of everybody and had 20 at everything, not because they were good memorizing only, but because they were really bright, right? They could mix things together. But I don't know if
we shouldn't forget everybody's favorite Austrian painter. If he was allowed to go to art school, would we have had World War II? Something to think about.
I have my idea if it's a good time to share that. And Headless, you and Nick inspired me to share this today, but it's a wonderful correspondence, of course, complementary to what Ricardo shared, because in fact, it's all about number. First, I want to say it's a simple equation that I call it a proof of metaphysics, if you will. But I'll explain the numbers in it a little bit. One number that is in it is 84,000. And the 84,000 is in Buddhism a very celebrated number. And it represents 4 sets of 21,000 corruptions, right? And to me, it actually reminds me of the symbolism behind the 3 ruffians in the Masonic initiation story. There are 4 types of corruptions: 21,000 of passion, 21,000 of hatred, 21,000 of ignorance, which those are the 3 that are very much like the 3 ruffians. And the 4th is a 21,000 of a combination of the 3 equally. So you have the 84,000 defilements of Buddhism being made up of these 3 and 4 components of 21,000. Buddha is said to have imparted 84,000 lessons, sometimes 82,000. But it's essentially there is a solution for every problem in Buddhism. There's the 84,000 problems or defilements, and there are the 84,000 lessons of Buddha as curative of these worldly defilements. So there's 84,000 is a very special number for that reason in Buddhism. Now, I love the number 108. It is also highly regarded in Buddhism. Of course, the number of beads on the Japa Mala is 108, and this is for recital of mantra. 100 it's really easy to count. You don't use the extra 8 beads. The extra 8 beads or 8 repetitions of recital of the mantra are for others, right? So mantra repetition in Tibetan Buddhism especially, but widely, is essentially used for certain initiatory processes and self-development ideas where one has to repeat the mantra a certain number of times to acquire the city or the benefit. And so 108 is like one of the dopest numbers. It's got the oneness, the nothingness, and the infinite right there. And it has all kinds of wonderful symbolism within it alone, as does 84,000. And if you divide 84,000 by 108, you get the dopest answer. And of course, Headless, you and Nick, in your upcoming presentation on Crowley's 777 book, made me want to share this today. The answer is 777.7777777 ad infinitum. And I've never come across the sevens in infinite kind of presentation. It's a very rare coordination, but there it is. When those two numbers are combined in a division process, you get this wonderful summation of 777.77777. So I'll put the article up on Occult Research Institute for those to check out and so forth real soon here. But it's a wonderful number, and it would not come about with a different base set. And many different, of course, summations and numerology symbolism would not be the same within different base systems. So just interesting 777 summation.
That is interesting. And the book 777 is supposed to be sort of like the complete treatise on associations, and it can branch out from there, but you've got the total seed of all of these different emanations of meaning and association coming through that book. So it's supposed to act as that sort of carrier of that kind of information. But that's really interesting when you combine the numbers and also the way things are done. I had a little something to present if you guys would like to see this. So we were doing a book review on this really, really old fairy book, right? And it was this, The Secret Commonwealth book. Now, what's really interesting that we had a real problem with is the use of F's as S's in this old English style manuscript. And what's interesting to me is that they have S's everywhere, right? So as well as that doesn't have any F's, but there's so many other ones that do. It's hard for me not to get the impression that they were, here's one, doomsday, right? And it's like, well, look, you're using S's right here. Why do you have to say doomsday? And it doesn't make any sense at all. I can't help but think that there was something more to the language than we sort of get from our perspective today that other people didn't have. Like, we were calling this the fairy language when we were doing this book review, because the stories he's telling and the way that he's telling those stories and the obvious encoding nature of where they're putting all of these S's and F's, it's hard not to come away with maybe that there's a unseen, unheard language that is going on behind the scenes all the time that we don't really have access to. It's not within our awareness. Could it be a
cipher? You try to put it on AI and try to determine what the reason of the substitution of the.
I have not, but that's a good idea. I was just thinking, this is the perfect idea of both coding and number, because there might be, like this one, RES, resemblance. Why did they have to put it there and not, S here, S there? Demons, why isn't that not an F? So is the Roman invention of good and bad demons. So it's just really strange. But I think there's other languages going on around us that we might not be privy to. And in what case are we being sort of left out of the full view of reality? And I think we're getting to that point now where we understand that everything we've been fed has been conveniently obfuscated from total view. And so maybe ask yourselves a little bit of those questions. Is like, is my education level where I want it to be? Is my, perception level where I want it to be? And how can I change that? And like those 84,000 problems, there's 84,000 solutions. And maybe just by listing out what are our obstacles and what are our, strengths, we can get to a point where we're actually doing a lot better than the way that society kind of wants us to be dumbed down. Just by being more aware.
Well, I for one, I thought that the answer to everything was 42, but it only took 17 million years to get to that answer. But I was not aware of the combination that Ethan was speaking about, and that I find it very interesting, especially the last result that doesn't end in a 666 but in a 777, like the antithesis of the other result. So not sure if there is a correlation there, or if there is considering that whoever created the opposite of Christianity, if it also included that into his writings, right? Because I know there is opposite Bibles to the Bible, so I'm just curious if you can find the opposite of there on those teachings. I don't know, but something to look for.
I do think that in numerology, the sun and the sun symbolism is often equated to 666, and that was a thing in Greek isopsophy before Christianity existed. So I think that a lot of what 666 means is like that inner power that you're not supposed to have. You're not supposed to have that inner strength. You're supposed to get that from the outside, from this 777, sort of the God world. 6 being the number of man, you're not supposed to be bringing any power out of yourself. You're only supposed to have it from the Edenic state, where you're not supposed to think, you're not supposed to have reason. You're supposed to allow the state of God or state of nature to take over your perception, which is a lot dumber than what people expect it to be, right? You're not allowed to have any sort of gifts or teachings that are not in accordance to that Edenic state.
Well, in my readings, I found that only in Catholicism writings or derived from that, 6 is a negative number. So, because if you go and look into different opinions, let's call it like that, you'll find that 6 is a very positive number, right? I had a personal interest in it because I was pursued by number 6 all my life. So if I combine the numbers of my address, of my identity card, my passport has 7 or 8 6s. So what's the odds of that happening, right? So I didn't even had to combine the numbers to get to the 6, right? I often lived either on 51 or lived in the 15, and it's always go around to 6. And I was always brought to understand it as, oh, that's a negative thing. That's why you are so bad luck in this or that, right? But in my studies, it doesn't show that 6 is negative at all. It's only negative in the regards of considering those 666 as the number of the beast. So is it the number of the beast or the number of the illuminator, right? Because if you go into satanic, who was Satan? First of all, it didn't exist in ancient times. It's just an invention that is fairly recent. But who was Satan? Satan was Lucifer. Lucifer was the brightest, the most beautiful, the enlightened one, and the preferred of God, right? And as many of the second in rank in religions, he decided to be as great as the number 1 and decided to have his own creation. You find that with Melkor in the Lord of the Rings, for instance. It's an echo of that story, but you find that in countless myths and legends and mythologies. The number two always wants to create his own because he doesn't agree with the limitations of the creation of the one. He wants to create his own world. He doesn't understand why I should be different when I have the same abilities.
Two used to be the unluckiest number. Pre-Christianity, it was always two that was to be avoided.
For a question of duality or for any other reason?
I think it
It's an unlucky number.
divisive duality. Yeah, I think it's interesting the idea behind 6 and 666, and the idea behind Lucifer and Satan, and even furthermore behind the snake of the Bible. It's all representative of religion keeping us away from what are powerful ideas. Are they negative or positive? Not necessarily. As Headless and I were discussing with Peter earlier, right? Are these symbols or even anything material? Is it negative or positive? No, it's just a certain level of power or lacking of power, really.
Well, the association could go either way in sort of like a non-dual state, right? You could have both positive and negative from the same number in a. And you got to have the duality before they become good or evil, and then one overtakes the other and starts the pendulum back and forth between good and evil all the time.
And if we're afraid of an idea, we won't investigate it. Is the tendency, right? So we'll just let the control systems control the narrative and the information.
Got to sit back and let the plan happen.
I think it's not a coincidence that the most ancient known to us religion in the world is the worship of the serpent, right? We find that since megalithic times. So what is that the Catholic Church decides to put as the most terrible thing that you must stay away from is the serpent? What is the cause of all evil to mankind? It was the serpent that ludibriated this woman and gave her knowledge. And this is the important part. He gave her knowledge. So was this magnanimous God wanted to keep us just stupid, like animals with privilege? Yeah, you can name all of the animals and they will respond to you, but you have no understanding of who you are, where you are, what you do. You don't have that because after she follows the serpent and eats from the apple that gives her the understanding, they even realize that they're naked, right? So you can get more absurd than that. How far out are you to don't understand that you have awareness of your own body? And in fact, it doesn't add up because by that time, Adam and Eve already had several sons. We only speak about helping out Cain and Abel, right? But they had multiple brothers, exactly like Christ had. The fact that Mary is considered to be an idol, I don't understand why. She was a woman that had so many other kids after him, right? So she was just a normal woman, and that even came to create a dynasty that many people consider to be the Merovingians, or from Mary Magdalene, from other perspectives, probably the most accepted ones. But it's the same notion. So it is the eradication of what was before, what was accepted by everyone before. That was the snake.
Yeah, let's destroy the snake. You got to kill it. You got to destroy it. Yeah.
Abrahamic inversion.
Even when I was a kid, whenever I would see a number that was large, like the 84,000, it seemed to me to be highly specific. But in asking questions of this subject matter, it seems that the more scholastic researchers have most often said they just meant a lot. Well, that doesn't seem to be the case when you cross-reference 84,000 with 108. It seems to me that they were being very specific. In the Bible, there is, of course, the 666 number that is associated with the Bible. There's also 144,000. and 13, I think are really big numbers to come out of the Bible. And of course, 144,000, no one scholastic would say it's just as a lot, because it means the 12 tribes multiplied by the 12,000 from each tribe to be the chosen ones for salvation. But guess what? 144,000 divided by 108 is quite a simple summation. It's 1333.33333 ad infinitum, which 13 and 33, those are like the Jesus numbers, often associated with the Jesus story anyway.
Do they have a certain number of beads in a rosary? I don't know. Is it 72?
Yes, there are different numbers of different rosaries for different sects and religions, but I believe most commonly in Islam, it's 72, which is 2/3 of 108. In Catholicism, I believe it's 36. Which is 1/3 of 108, and there are also 54 rosaries with 54 beads, which is of course half of 108. It seems to me that all the rosaries or similar bead sets are divided by or parts of 108. I haven't found one that isn't.
Right. And it all goes.
Lucy Morningstar says 59. So I could be wrong.
Interesting. Yeah, because 72
many are related to 108. And yeah, the 72 is super powerful headless. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I just did a search, and King Asoka built 84,000 stupas.
Right.
Just interesting.
Yeah, it's a highly regarded number, and there are in different stories there are different numbers of the lessons of Buddha. Sometimes there are 86,400, which correspond with the number of seconds in a day. So he's trying to say, for every moment where there's a problem, there's another solution. It's right there. I think anyway.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. I usually look into 3,600 as the number of seconds in an hour, right?
There you go. Which is there's the 36, 72, 108 formation again.
That's interesting.
All arising out of polarity. And so, understanding that as the fundamental building blocks, as well as being something hated in numerology, it's almost like that's the shunning of the world, is when you see it too, when you think conflict, that's a shunning of the outside world. It's a retreating into the self, So in some ways, the two is like a call to action.
Well,
please, Ricardo.
I was just saying that I'm a fan of duality. In fact, I think that if anyone wants to have a deeper understanding of whatever is the subject that they are approaching, they has to use the concept of duality, because otherwise you'll be single narrative, right? You always have to see what is the other side of it, right? I can at the same time agree and not believe in something, but I agree that it's logical, or I can believe in two things that are opposite to one another at the same time, because they make sense in their own concept, in their own reality context. So the fact that most people cut out and can't live with duality, to me, is a mistake. I might be wrong, but it's again duality. But I think that but I think that being able to believe, it's like Alice in Wonderland. I believe in how many things before breakfast or something like that. So,
right.
logic doesn't imply that you follow only one line of thought, right? In fact, it won't be very logical if you only look into a problem from one narrow perspective. You have to look at it from multiple ones. And although duality implies two, I think in this case implies to watch anything that agrees or doesn't agree with what you're saying or thinking.
Right. Well,
And-
I think this is been a good episode. If you got any closing thoughts, let's hear them. Go ahead, Ethan.
Ethan.
I was just going to say there's even the polarity in the unity in a sense that is illustrated in 108, where there is the one, the singular, the individual, and there's the nothing in between, the infinite, right? So that you have this unity coming together is by way of polarity in a sense.
Even in our power, you need to have the polarity, otherwise you don't have a current.
Right. That's right. Good point.
Absolutely. So definitely, guys, check in with us. We're going to be doing a bunch of other shows. Ricardo, you got any big guests coming up? Ethan, you got any shows?
We will have we have two published right now. We have an interview with Rick Osmond. We have Jep of North, and we just published our Brian Corey Dobbs, the producer, director, and writer of Blue Planet Red, which is a very interesting documentary that I recommend. So it's a revival of, for those that are not aware of the work of Richard Hoagland, you can go on my Rumble. You have his presentations to the ONU and to the Congress of the United States, where he shows all these formations in Mars and in the moon. And so it's like UFO disclosure. We are 50 years in the study, but we are still looking at as if we hadn't looked at anything. So I think that's why that documentary is important, because he brings new people, actual researchers, scientists speaking about what NASA is not telling us. So
absolutely. Ethan, you got anything coming up?
I just did a discussion with Stein. Stein and I talked for an hour and a half or so the other day, and it'll be coming out soon. We were talking about remote viewing and martial arts and philosophy and stuff. Should be a fun little listen.
Absolutely. You guys can check me out on here. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing another Alchemy Monday. And on Thursday, we've got another mailbag. Tuesday, we're going over 777 a little bit with Nick. So definitely tune in and check those out. Thank you all, and I'll see you again next time.